Welcome to Subway Sports Talk.
Dan, clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go. Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in on SST, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts app, YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we appreciate you the same. If you hear me say these words, it means you found us somewhere. And that means you probably like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, 5 stars. How you doing? How you been? Alec Argento is here today. It was a premature sup, Alec.
Well, I want to get into it, so I do the stuff first. So
yeah, but you didn't give me a chance. Alec Argento is here today to talk about something that he should have been talking about every week with us, because it's been a real topic of conversation. It's been something that's driving me nuts in our multiple group chats and solo texts, and it's the New York Knicks. So I'm here. Alec Argento is here, and Alec, how are you doing?
What's up?
There we go. That's better. Alec, how are you actually doing?
Life's lifing, but the Knicks are starting to win a couple of games, which is the first time that I'm rooting for something in a while that's been positive. So I'm dealing with that.
Yeah. So the plan on this podcast, because now we are 14 games in. My math, I think, is mathing correctly there. 8-6 as we record this on Tuesday night, and there's been ups and there's been downs, and frankly, the downs have been outweighing the ups to this point with this team, because you come in with real expectations of being a top 3, top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. You come in with some of the best odds to win the East, to win the NBA Finals, the whole 9. And you see this product to start off the year, and some of the flaws show their face very quickly. So there's been a lot of negativity in the Knicks world right now. And then there's been some people who say, hey, it's really early. Let's all chill. Even those people, I still think, are aware of the issues. But then there's been other people who are very much, oh my gosh, the Knicks world is burning, and this is serious. This is actually a problem. I don't want to get into anything super crazy specific just yet, but I know today on November 19th or 20th, if you're listening to this then, you feel at least 5 or 10% better than you did maybe a week ago?
Sure, that's reasonable.
But I'm assuming you're still on the bottom side of feeling positive.
I mean, you picked on 2 pretty crappy teams, right? You beat the Nets and you beat the Wizards, so it's nice to see them gelling. All credit to them. You beat who you're supposed to beat, but I mean, they're getting embarrassed by good teams out there still.
Right. So the negativity is still swirling, and I think that's something that's very fair. So the point of this podcast here is to air all of our grievances, to talk through this, to see what's real, what's not real, what can be looked forward to, and basically try to put a grasp on what this Knicks team is going to be for the rest of 2024 and obviously into 2025. So to recap quickly for anyone who hasn't paid attention, obviously you don't re-sign Hartenstein, which will come up in a minute. Then you decide to make the trade for Mikal Bridges, which realistically you only sent out Bojan Bogdanovic as well as a boatload of picks. But as far as players are concerned, it's Bojan. And then the big one where you send out Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo for Karl Anthony Towns. They've also dealt with injuries to this point. I know Miles McBride has now missed a game or two, but also Precious Achiuwa hasn't made his return yet. Mitchell Robinson, as expected, has not made his return yet. So this team, for all the new pieces, is also not a full team just yet. So from your perspective, Alec, here we are, almost at 15 games. What has been most shocking to you as far as the negativity? On the points that you are pointing out are bad and need to be fixed, or maybe can't be fixed, whatever it is. What has been the most shocking to you on that front?
How absolutely terrible Karl Anthony Towns is his defense. I knew how good, how bad he was, or at least I thought I did, and it's 10 times worse. It's the worst. It's almost as bad as Jericho Sims at center. It's just that bad, and it sucks in the entire defense, and it destroys our 3-point defense, which is absolutely terrible. And they're still getting wide open looks against crappy teams. They're just not making them like a good team would.
So the Karl Anthony Towns trade for you to this point has been a bummer, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, dude.
It's just a bummer because of the defense and the offense that has been good? Where's like the balance on that? Like what, give
He,
me like a pie chart of like how good the offense has been versus how bad the defense has been. Where's that like land percentage
his
wise?
his offense is great. It's fun to watch him. He he's rolling to the basket and making fun ass plays, and he's hitting threes like at a decent enough clip. I'd like to see him do more, but it's not. You said it the other day. The math ain't mathin'. His defense is that atrocious, and I understand. Like, eventually we're gonna hope to get Mitch back, hope to get Precious back. Maybe Huck Purdy is something decent. That's not enough to not make me concerned when it comes to the fact that Mitch is oft injured, Sims is ass, and Huck Purdy is very, very like we don't know what the hell we're getting out of him. So at the even best case scenario, you're going to be getting a good amount of cat at defense, and you don't know where the rest of the I'm sorry, good amount of cat at the five. You don't know where the rest of the minutes are going to come from, and if you're going to get anything valuable. Thus far, you have not.
So where I disagree with you is about the mathing. I think when we texted about that the other day, I mentioned that phrase like about the mathing and whatnot. I think the math on Carly Towns has been mathing so far. I think where the Knicks are falling short is the depth, right? So
Sure.
Carl Anthony Towns, not good on defense, right? He was never sold to us as a good defender, other than people giving that pie in the sky theory on, well, did you see what he did against Nikola Jokic in the playoffs last year? Which is true, which in specific matchups, he holds up better than against other matchups, right? Like clearly he's not one who is good at navigating space on defense. He's not one who's an awesome rim protector, but one-on-one against a post player, he can be tougher. He could be good. He can actually mitigate some good post players' games, right? So that's true, but it's not enough on a day-to-day when in this league right now, how many true post up players are going to kill you, are going to hurt you? There's what, half a dozen, right? We're talking about Jokic, we're talking about Embiid, who Cat actually looked really good against, even though it was his first game back, so whatever. Like you're talking about Alperen Şengün, like the list gets bleak very quickly when you start talking about true post up scores. So that strength that Cat has on defense, which is simply one-on-one defense in the post, it doesn't really matter. And what's been most shocking to me, which is like a recalibration for us, and I think you were alluding to it before, is his rim protection numbers aren't good. Sure. However, because those rim protection numbers aren't good, it's affecting the defense at large. And I think that's been the most shocking because if you think about this team on paper, you see Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Miles McBride, and you're like, oh, four really, really good perimeter defenders. This should be a good perimeter defense team. But they are constantly overcompensating for the lack of rim protection, which has led to threes galore for opposing teams. So that's been to me like the combined negative on Towns' defense. But back to the plus minus of it all, and I know it's a smaller ish sample size to this point on plus minus, but the math is mathing for Towns. I know it doesn't feel like that all the time. He has been the best player on offense on this team so far this year. And I know Brunson's numbers haven't been perfect, but he's still, he's still being Brunson to an extent. Like he's still averaging, his 24, 25 points. His assists are actually up to 7 right now, which I think is a good thing. But Towns has been the best offensive player on this team so far. Right now, he is shooting 54% from the field, 51% from three on 5 attempts, which is astounding numbers. And he's 85% from the free throw line, getting to the line 5.5 times per game. Those numbers at face value are, I think, just intrinsically good, right? So the math on the plus minus front has him as an offensive box plus minus plus 7.3 offensive. And then defensive, he's a minus 0.2. Now, that obviously takes a lot of things into account. He's been rebounding very well. That's a good thing. We like rebounding. That is how you end defensive possession. So it's an important part of defense. But I think that math on just the defensive side of the ball negatively affecting Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby and Miles McBride is the crux of the actual issue.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. I think it's hard to the plus minus is not affecting like, hey, he's the only one not playing with Sims, and Sims is actually genuinely worse too. So that's
Yeah.
affecting plus and minus pretty dramatically. It's hard to make an OG Anunoby and a Josh Hart look terrible on defense, but they kind of have because of how wide open things have been. And the math may be mathing, but he doesn't pass the eye test at all. Like the counting stats are there. He's getting it. His efficiency's there, but you know that it doesn't feel, when you look at that game, it doesn't feel like he's impacting winning. It feels like he's there and he's grabbing rebounds from wide open misses, and his rebounds are up because percentages have been down for some pretty good shooters too. So yeah, the stats are there, but it just does not feel like he's been doing it against anybody decent. We haven't beat a decent team yet. We really haven't. You might say the Bucks or the Sixers, but they've been pretty terrible too.
They've been two like the worst teams in the league, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been really bad. Even the Heat, who are like a meddling team similar to the Knicks in some ways, like, yeah, it's a nice win, but it's not really like a very impressive win.
So that's kind of what I'm like. I think you could look at the East and say, hey, the East has been ass, right? It just kind of has. Outside of two teams, and you don't expect the Cavs to be 82-0 throughout the thing, but you started this off by saying like you feel like 5 to 10% better than you did before, right? And I think that's a pretty realistic thing to say, because you could be the Sixers, who look like they might have to tank this year, like they just straight up might have to tank. Bucks, there's rumors that Giannis requested a trade, right? Like that's not a great situation you want to be in 16 or 14 games into the season. But I think where like you feel super disappointed personally, and I think I speak for a lot of fans, is you're not comparing yourself to the Sixers or you're not comparing yourself to the Magic. You're not comparing yourself to the Hawks, to the Heat. You're comparing yourself to the Celtics and the Thunder.
Cavs.
I don't really believe in the Cavs. I think that they're kind of a mirage in the sand. But when your expectations are there and you're where you would have been last year when you started out the season, it's disappointing. What I feel a little bit better about in the last game or so, or the last 2-3 games, when I texted you, Pete, I realized how dynamic the offense is in a way that just we kind of haven't ever been, in my opinion. Even like the mellow years, it's pretty one dimensional. You look at like Mikal Bridges, who, yeah, I know statistics say like a mid-range game isn't like the best thing unless you're making it, and he makes it. He has a really, really high percentage of mid-range. Then you have OG, who's catch and shoot. You have Brunson, who can shoot from all three levels, and Cat, who can pretty much do the same too. So the offense is there. And I think what you always realize in the NBA is offense wins championships. It's kind of the opposite of other, the saying and in most other sports, at least nowadays. And you got to hope that getting a couple pieces throughout the season might impact things. But it doesn't look like you're going to be a 1 seed. It doesn't look like you're going to be a 2 seed, which is what was on the table to start the season. And I think that's where a lot of the disappointment comes from.
That's totally fair. I think if you look at a few things, and I'll go back first to the Knicks' schedule of wins and losses so far this year. The two losses against the cream of the crop are game 1 of the season and game 3 of the season. They lost to Boston, dramatically, not dramatically in the sense that it was close, in the sense that it was, a one-sided show where they dominated. Game 1, you kind of always throw it out, whether it's a win or a loss. You're like, it's game 1 of the season. Like, it's always going to be weird. The Cavs loss in game 3 of the season, they played the Cavs pretty well. They lost by 6 points. Like, there was a fine game, I guess, but it's a loss. It also feels like a long time ago. And I think that's the point that I've been trying to make all along here, is like when they play the Cavs again, which is going to be well down the road, they actually don't play them until February again. These are going to be two entirely different teams. We're not talking about an undefeated Cavs team anymore. We're not talking about a Knicks team that's maybe in the mud still. If you're looking at a team in the Knicks that maybe they do keep going on a nice streak and they get to 10, 12 games above 500 by February, maybe more than that, right? So I think the next time they play, you obviously will feel very different about it. Other than that, the disappointing losses, I think, are Houston, Atlanta, and Chicago. Yes, they lost to Indiana as well, but they split with them already this year. And Indiana's a good team, right? Like, we know that even if we all hate them right now, like, they're a good team. Losing to them at their place is not really something to be ashamed of. It's just a tough loss. But losing to teams like Atlanta and Chicago specifically, because I think even Houston's been very good this year, and that's not a loss to like hang your head about. But you can't really lose to Atlanta and Chicago if you want to be a top dog in the Eastern Conference. That's what it comes down to.
Agreed.
But with beating the Nets twice, who've been playing everybody tough, crushing Washington, now they have a couple games coming up. They got a nice road stretch starting tomorrow. Phoenix, Utah, Denver, Dallas, and Charlotte. Like, you got to go out there and you got to beat Phoenix. You got to beat Denver or Dallas. Like, right? If you go out there, I'm not going to count the Jazz and the Hornets because they're low-level teams. but in 3 of the next 5 games, Phoenix, Denver, Dallas, like you got to see the Knicks team go out and win 2 out of those 3, right? If you lose to Phoenix well, I think Durant's actually going to be out for that game, so maybe that's one you really want to get. If you lose to Denver and Jokic at their place, it's not something to be ashamed of, but you need to see a level of competency. Now, onto the specifics of like Mikal Bridges, for example, in this offense, which I've been very happy with this entire year. Couldn't agree with you more, Alec. Those mid-range shots, they're starting to come back into like being a luxury, really, when you see these players who are actually good at it. And he's been really good at it in his career. Last year was one of his worst seasons from the mid-range, but generally speaking, you're seeing a guy shoot incredible numbers. So right now, through 14 games, he's shooting 59% from 3 to 10 feet. So like really paint extended. And he's shooting 63% from 10 to 16 feet and 57 from 16 to 3-point range. So that mid-range shot that we're seeing with the eye test absolutely is mathing. And it created something new in this offense where, Brunson always shoots those balls pretty well, but that was kind of it. Like you didn't really want Randall to shoot them. Like he made them and he got hot. And occasionally like those post up and fadeaways were nice to see and whatever, but they were ball stopping moments. The way Mikal gets those shots are much more fluid. It's attacking a closeout, pump and go, dribble to your spot, get high on that release and nail it. And he's been money with that front. And the way OG and Anunoby has been revitalized as an offensive force in this season, I think is also a huge positive that goes back to Karl-Anthony Towns. So what he gives you on offense, he might be taking away on defense. But I think that point of this offense truly being really good right now can't go unnoticed and unappreciated because we're not used to this type of team, Alec. And I think that's one of the big recalibration from fans right now. It's like this Knicks team has died for this type of offense, even when they were at their peak over the last few years. And we're seeing a guy in Jalen Brunson now who I think he is now starting to realize like, oh, shoot, I don't have to score 29 every night. I can have an amazing game and score 20 points or 18 points if I now get assist up to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's something that Brunson hasn't had the luxury to do over the past 2 seasons. And now with the way OG's shooting and playing and cutting and Towns and Mikal and even Hart, like you're seeing a true dynamic offense that now after 14 games, they are still in the top 3 of offensive rating in the NBA. It's Cleveland, Boston, Knicks, and then a pretty large jump to the number 4 team in LA. And that's such a different ball game than we're ever used to with a Tibbs team and a Knicks team in general.
Yeah, I said it to you the other day, but I think there's 3 things that have been limiting the Knicks this year. One is the depth, which we already acknowledged. The other being Cat's defense and how it sucks in the other the help defenders. But the other one was Brunson having to play hero ball. Or Brunson feeling that he had to play hero ball because that's what he's been taught. That's what he's done. That's how he's executed here in New York. And I think that one is starting to not be a concern anymore. What did he have? 10 assists last game or whatever he had? He had a lot. And I think he's starting to understand that, he knows where folks are going to be. He knows who he can rely on. He knows where he can rely on them. And it wouldn't surprise me if he has multiple 14 assist games or something like that throughout the year. And that's something I didn't know that we were going to. You hoped you were going to get it out of Brunson, but you didn't know. Even if you were pretty confident that this was going to be a good season, you didn't know that he was going to have that in him and be willing to captain himself, I guess. So I've been pleased with, and I think that's one thing you always hold your hat on as a constant with the Knicks is when you have a player like Brunson who constantly is able to adapt to the situation, even if he's not playing well or playing up to the level that you'd like him to. He typically doesn't have 2 bad games in a row. He typically is able to figure out how people are scheming him and get past that, and that does give me a level of confidence. In addition to the fact that we might be getting reinforcements within the next couple of weeks.
And I think another key point on that Brunson front is he can have great games without great scoring output now, where it felt like if he wasn't scoring 25, like the floor on this offense was just too low, right? But now 2 nights ago against Brooklyn, or 2 games ago against Brooklyn, in the second one on Sunday night there, Brunson shot 3 of 14 from the field, but he had 10 assists. And now he has 2 games in a row, double-digit assists. His last 4 games, 11 assists, 10, 7, 8. Those are numbers that are great. And you see some of these point guards around the league, and Tyrese Halliburton comes to mind. And I said it on the Fan last week with Anthony Gallo, and we were talking about Tyrese Halliburton, like kind of joking around how he could be, a weird NBA character sometimes. And I was like, listen, I hate to say this, but sometimes I wish Brunson played like Halliburton. And I mean that not in the sense of like the killer instinct and the scoring or whatever, but the way Halliburton moves the ball, right? With Halliburton getting 14 assists in a game is just a Tuesday night, right? It's not shocking to him, to us, to see Halliburton put up numbers like that. And Brunson now, for the first time in his career, can be a point guard that can do that with like consistency, because there's all these pieces that make sense, that work well at each other. And again, that offense is shown out. I know these numbers don't mean a lot to everybody, but offensive rating is not just based on just points. It's like efficiency and like per 100 possessions and et cetera, right? So the Cavs are the highest, 122.1. The Celtics are second, 121.4. The Knicks are third, 121.1. The next team is 117.7. That's like almost a 3-point, or it's more than a 3-point jump right there. That's huge. The next to go 3 more points down, you got to go all the way down to the 9th team, right? So that's a real thing that I think it's so different from like our fan watching perspective, because right now you look at their defensive rating and like their defensive efficiency number, and they're 21st, and they've been lingering. They've been 19th one day, then after a couple of games they go to 23rd. Now they're 21st, whatever. That's bad. So my question to you, Alec, is what is that balance now? Because in years past, it's been like, oh, they're a top 5 defensive unit and a top like 13 offensive unit, and that's a good balance. Do you think this offense could withstand a top 3, top 5-ish balance? And where can this defense actually get better?
I can see the offense doing this. I mean, but I guess to reframe your question, I don't think you can be a true contender unless you're a top 10 in both. And I think that's kind of what Tibbs is always striving for. So I think the offense is there. I think you're consistently like that's, you assume the offense is going to get better over time. There'll be hiccups, but typically in something like this, it's just going to get better. Everyone on the team is scoring double digit. Everybody in the starting 5 is scoring double digit every night, and they have the best starting 5 offensively in the league. So I think that's sustainable, and that's with a really thin bench with a lot of rookies who are probably going to develop as the season goes on. The defense, with the eye test, it scares the crap out of me. I don't think they look good at all, but I know that they're thin. And for some reason, Jericho Sims is getting like 50 minutes a game. But you do have to trust in Tibbs. You do have to trust in OG, in Josh Hart, in McHale, in Deuce McBride. And it seems pretty obvious what the problem is, right? It's the lack of center. And the only concern I have is, okay, let's say we get Mitch back. Let's say Mitch hypothetically is healthy the whole season. And he comes back, he's just, this miracle thing. The offense has to change pretty dramatically with Mitch in the offense. Obviously, Mitch has to start at the 5, and then Cat has to go to the 4. Josh Hart goes to back to being a 6-man, which I think is where he should be anyway. Mitch is a nothing burger on offense outside of offensive rebounding, so he kind of clogs up the paint, which will
and alley-oops.
Yeah, which kind of limits what's been so successful for Cat so far, which is rolls to the basket. So then now Cat has to be a spot up shooter. Do you still have the dynamic, right? Is he still going to be building the offense a little bit more? I don't know. So you're kind of getting used to what you're seeing now, and it's starting to build and starting to see what looks good. And of course, this is going to be a lineup here and there, but this is probably going to look markedly different in a couple of months or in the playoffs when we get there. Even if Huck Purdy develops really well, right? And for some reason he's starting over Mitch, it still changes Cat's game pretty dramatically. You hope that works, and you would assume it does because of what he did in Minnesota with Rudy, but you just don't know what it looks like in New York, right? And I think that adds a lot of extra questions to the whole dynamic.
See, now I'm not sure if the button that I would push is to put Mitch in the starting lineup. I don't think that's the button I'd push. I think the math could math the best, and now we're talking a lot of math here.
What?
No, I think you can continue with the starting lineup that you have, and then if you see such a different output there, and that doesn't mean Mitch and Cat will never see the floor together, but more so like that's the rarity in the game where you see them together. But then like Towns, you can take away like 3 or 4 minutes a game for. Mitch gets the Sims minutes plus 3 or 4, et cetera, maybe more because they can share the court a little bit. Then when you get Cat out of the game, Brunson's still in, you have the pick and roll with Mitch and Brunson with the spacing of the rest of the guys around. And then all you really need to do, because again, with Cat on the floor this year, the Knicks are a winning team. They are better when he's on the floor this year. I
Yeah,
know you can say eye test, I know you can say XYZ.
I know what
I
you're
agree
saying.
with you, but I don't agree because the literal numbers of how the Knicks perform when Cat's out there has been the best. He has the best number on the team, right? So if
Yeah,
they don't put Mitch in the starting lineup, but then those numbers when Cat's not in the game get exponentially better because Mitch is a way better player than Jericho Sims, that to me is probably the ticket from getting that initial leap of 21st ranked defense up to 12th. And then from there, you continue to tinker. You work in Precious, who again isn't like a savior type player, but is just so much more competent than Sims right now, that
yeah.
might be the most efficient way to put this lineup together.
What you're saying makes sense theoretically. I don't see a winning brand of basketball happening if Mitch is getting 15 minutes off the bench. Mitch has to be getting starter minutes. He has to, and the only way you're getting starter minutes is if he's playing alongside Cat. I'm not saying he has to start. They have to share the court often. It's not like sparingly, oh, we're trying this out, we're figuring things out. This has to be done with intention. There has to be a level of, I know Mitch is going out there. I'm expecting to depend on Mitch in this situation. And I think that Mitch makes them a better team. And I think it makes them a better starting unit too. I just don't know how it operates. I would love to have less energy from Cat spent on rebounding, right? And I think that would be really
Mm-hmm.
beneficial if we have Mitch spending 90% of his energy out there just being a madman on the boards and rim protecting and blocking and all that stuff, which is not going to work out for Towns, and just gives him more energy to focus on offense where he's been excelling a ton. So
So
I see what you're saying. I don't see how it's successful that way.
So let me ask you this question. If your idea works out well, right? You put Mitch in the starting lineup, Hart goes to the bench, where now, say the first sub package is going to be
We
Brunson
need
gets
a
a
wing off the
blow.
bench.
No, I agree. So let me just play this out for you. So say like the sub package could work like this in theory. So now Brunson gets the first blow, uh, and then you bring in Hart and McBride to then run that point guard system. Mitch comes out, and then or then maybe I don't know, because then that's what I'm saying. Like when you start thinking about how the whole rotation is going to work, who comes out first then, right? Brunson comes out, Mitch and McBride. I'm sorry, Hart and McBride come in. Is now Mitch and Cat still out there? Because now offensively you're looking weird without Brunson. Or does Mitch come out
No,
too, and now it's Hart, McBride, McHale, OG, and Cat?
I think Cat comes out first.
So
Cat
Cat
comes out.
comes out, and then you have Hart and McBride with Mitch. So
Yeah,
the Cat and Brunson come out together, like, or do they play alongside?
that works for me if Cat and Brunson come out together. I have confidence in that lineup to actually being able to do something together.
And then McHale becomes a little bit more on ball and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
and
And that's
especially with
interesting.
how OG is developed on off, not developed, but how OG has looked on offense
Showing
this year
himself,
too.
yeah.
They seem like a pair that you can rely on offense to lead to work well with the second unit.
Now, the other question, I think this is something that you have to think about and then sometimes work backwards. Is Mitchell Robinson in the closing unit? In the
I think
final 4 minutes of the game, is Mitch out there, or are you now inserting Hart to join the other four and Cat's the lone defender in the final 4 minutes? Because I think that's more likely of a scenario.
I
Because Hart
think you
has to be
have
out there.
what I think is interesting is I think you have the ability to play depending on the scenario this year in a way that you haven't been
And the
able to
matchup.
before. Yeah, so like I think Mitch comes out if you're ahead and you need defense, right? And they're there, but I think you put Cat in at the 5 if you're looking for offense, if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking to come back a little bit. I'm being like overly reductive there, but I think you have the personnel to change accordingly to the situation.
No, I think being reductive is the whole purpose of this, right? Because you'd think that Tibbs and his staff are having these conversations every day, probably, right? Like,
Right.
what does it look like when Precious is back? What does it look like when Precious and Mitch are back? These are all things they have to plan for. Which of these young guys, like Kolick or Pockholm, are going to actually be in this rotation? Are any of them going to be in the rotation, right? What do we do if McBride's out for an extended period of time? Is Kolick just slotted right in? And all these things come into consideration. So I think you do have to be slightly reductive there. I just think in a world where it's a close game, right? Say it's a 2 point swinging game, both directions, and it's the final 4 minutes, Hart has to be out there and Cat has to be out there. And I think the odd man out is Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you're looking at that, but also like let's say it's a close game about against the Sixers, who you put in that lineup? You're putting Mitch in there. You're absolutely putting Mitch in there, and you might play the hot hand between the wings, between Hart, OG, and McHale. You know how Mitch is great against big body centers. He always has been, and
Right.
if that's out there, which there are quite a few of them in the league that are worth putting Mitch in for, then I think you do that.
Right. And then maybe if it's Boston, if Porzingis and Horford are out there, then maybe Mitch becomes not relevant.
Right. I just like I it's to
Unless
even have
unless
the
his rim protection is so relevant that he has to be out there.
I think the thing with Mitch that I think everyone forgets, including myself, I think Mitch is such an out of sight, out of mind kind of person. But when he's on the court, Mitch is such a difference maker, and he always has been
Agreed.
this entire time in the league. But you look at him, and he's never playing, he's always hurt, and he can't shoot. So you're like, you forget how incredible he is on the boards, how incredible he is rim protecting, how many blocks he gets in a game, and how good his defense is in regards to not fouling compared
Yeah.
to most people his size in this
Carl Anthony
league.
Towns.
Right, and you look at Towns. Like Towns gets these ticky tack fouls all game long.
It's
It
actually
drives me
out of control.
It's insane. It's insane. And Mitch used to get that when he first was in the league, and now he doesn't get that at all. And that's what you like really need and expect on this team to like make a difference.
And I want to change gears into some other parts of the depth and other players that we're looking at here. But how shocking has it been the fouls that Towns commits or gets called for? Because I mean, like, listen, I've watched a fair bit of Towns in his career, but you never watch it as a fan unless like I bet on the Timberwolves that night, right? Maybe, I don't know. So
Yeah,
I get annoyed by Towns watching him in the past, but now when he's on your team, it's like, oh my God. But I gotta say, there are some times where I'm like, dude, we're calling that. We're calling that on it. Like, I feel like he gets a quicker whistle than most because everyone expects him to make a dumb foul.
yeah, but you know what it is? He's so nice too, and he doesn't have like an edge to him, so he's never really arguing. He's like, "Ah, man, what are you calling that for?" And I think that's part of it. Like, there's a psychological aspect to foul calling in this league that I think we all kind of watch. Like, Randall used to never get called for fouls because he would just like body people, and it was just what you
And
expected
he
of him.
got bodied on the other end and didn't complain
Yeah,
really. Well, he would complain a
ex-
little bit, but
but not really. I think now that like Randall's
comparatively,
gone,
not really.
yeah, yeah, but the fouls that you see on Cat, they're so soft. They're the softest things in the world, but he doesn't argue them. He doesn't have any like level of tenacity to it.
He more so whines.
Yeah, and it's just like they're not going to go away if that's how you're responding to it. And on
Yeah.
top of that, I think the Knicks have also been kind of getting hosed by the refs, not in a way that I think has impacted like wins or losses, but what was it? The OG got like three reviews on him, and they were all against him when he got like elbowed in the face and shot like a full arm extension the other day. So I think the Knicks have been getting
Right.
a lot more ticky tack fouls just in general than they've historically got.
After all that, it's so good. Honestly, there's two Knicks lines that I cannot get out of my head this year, and it's "Congrats, Jalen, well deserved."
I don't know that one.
From OG Ananobi's "Congratulations for
Oh
Jalen."
yeah.
Him becoming getting named captain of the team, and it's just OG Ananobi's eyes, like you just see like from above his nose to his forehead, and he's like, "Congrats, Jalen, well deserved," and that's it. Everyone else was like, Brunson, man, like Jalen, man, like you're a real leader, and like we appreciate you, like you're a dog in this league, and you deserve this, and it's just like, congrats, Jalen. it's so funny.
I do remember that now, yeah.
And I love that, like, this year now, OG has truly, like, cycled into the Knicks internet ether. Whereas last year, it was like he came in, they were insanely good. We didn't get to see the personality of OG. And then he got hurt. And then we're like, all right, when's he coming back? When's he coming back? Now, like, all these viral OG clips that have kind of been on the internet for a long time, like, that, like, I, as a weird basketball nerd, have seen, like, a lot of these. Most people haven't. Everyone's seeing how weird he is, and I freaking love it. I really love it. Like the whole thing of him taking videos of just like his eyes up is a thing. Like he's been doing that for years, and it's so funny. Did you see the video of him continuing to take the mic out of Alan Hahn's hands?
Yeah. With Cat in the background.
And then Alan Hahn's like, yeah. Han's like, all right, I'm going to hold this on from here on out. Ask the next question. OG just takes it right back from him again. It's so funny. But I do love seeing OG's.
Get loose.
right? Like seeing
Yeah.
his personality has been really fun. But after all that, and then congrats, Jalen will deserve, have been just on a loop in my head for like a month now. But I want to change gears here because part of this whole math of the Knicks, and we're doing a lot of math tonight, is not just who's on the court now, but who's missing. I think we don't need to dwell on this, but I just need to say it now. People who are complaining about the cat trade and relating it to Randall and DiVincenzo, I think are off because the real thing that you're missing as a Knicks fan is actually Isaiah Hartenstein. I think that just needs to be stated, right? From like a one-to-one perspective, complaining about Cat and saying, oh, Devo and Randall, I think that's wrong. It's the inability to have been able to pay Isaiah Hartenstein what he eventually got elsewhere because of cap situations. Like they just couldn't do it. They wanted to, they couldn't. That's what we're missing as fans, just from like a pure basketball perspective. So if you're complaining about Cat and being like, oh my God, Randall and DiVincenzo, we missed him so much, I get it. But I do think that on the court, Hartenstein is what you actually miss.
I think
Does
that's
that make
unfair.
sense?
No,
Yeah, it's unfair.
yeah, because I don't think that that's what the trade was billed as. I think the trade was we got a center. We don't have a center anymore. We just traded for one of the best centers in the league. We lost Hartenstein. Yeah, that sucks. But we have one of the best centers in the league now on this team. And he is a terrible defensive center. So I'm not saying that you would have gotten that with Randall and Devo, but you wouldn't have had worse center play. I don't think you can. I think he's the worst
No, I
starting center in
disagree.
the league.
That's what? No. Hold on.
Defensively?
Oh, specifically defensively?
Oh yeah. No, obviously he's not the worst starting center in the league offensively, but
Because in fact,
defensively,
he's been one of the best centers in the league this year.
yes. But
Overall.
defensively, rim protection wise, what is 91% of
Bad.
of
The numbers
time?
are bad.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you might as well just roll Sims out there at that point, and then you can keep. I mean, for defensive purposes, you might
Okay.
and you would have had a similar offense, not the same, but you would have had a similar offensive level of production from Randall to Cat. Randall's been playing very well in Minnesota. You know what he would have did here. And
Weirdly, Devo's been playing bad in Minnesota.
Sure, but I think we've always said like Devo's best place to play was here. There was more value on the Knicks than anywhere else.
Power of friendship. We also said that about Randall too.
Yeah, that's true, but he's been playing well. But you have Devo on the bench, which solves another issue we have, which is very little depth. You know, we did a 2-for-1, and we lost a bunch of injured players along the way. So I just to go back to your original proposition, I don't think that is an unfair statement because I don't think that Cat is a good center, and that's what the trade was supposed to fix. The trade was supposed to fix center play. He is a power forward.
Where I would disagree, though, where I would push back on that front is the overall production that we're getting out of the center position is as good as Isaiah Hartenstein or better.
From offense, overall, you're saying net?
One-to-one, Cat to Hartenstein, Cat is a more productive player.
But I've also said this too. I said this before the trade happened, and I'm seeing it. I don't love OG at the 4. I don't love him at the 4. I think he's not a natural 4, and I think he fits the offense a lot better at the 3. And I'd rather Mikhail at the 2. And I know Mikhail could play either, but I want Josh Hart on the bench. So I think that you have two people playing out of position, which is causing the defense to collapse a lot because they're not good on the sizes that they're assigned to.
No, I see what you're saying there. I think OG and Mikhail both are better to spell in the position up, right? Like they can do it, but you don't want them starting there and playing the bulk of their minutes there.
Right.
And again, this comes back to the depth and health of this team, which is where I want to segue this to. So the Hartenstein thing, I think we agree how much he's missed. I think that's obvious. Sure. Like he was so freaking good, and it's incredible that the Thunder are just rolling through everybody, and he hasn't even played yet. Like it's actually out of control how good the Thunder are. If you're a fringe NBA fan who's a Knicks fan, and you're like sick of these horrible primetime NFL games that are coming up occasionally, try to check out a Thunder game. I'm not kidding. They're out of control. They are so freaking good. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, and if Chet Holmgren's, I think he's back now. Like they're nuts. When Hartenstein comes back, I think they're a flawless team. Frankly, they're out of control. But besides the point, you look at the rest of this lineup and how they balance each other out. You look at Devo and you look at Randall in Minnesota to varying degrees of success. That leaves us with Hart, McBride, Bridges, OG, Pacom Dadier, and like kind of that's it. right? So it gets thin fast. In a weird way, they have one of the best wing units in the league, and they have one of the worst wing units in the league. It's
Mhm.
kind of combined to be both at the same time. And that's because of depth. Whereas last year, it felt like they were just flush with depth. Is this something that you think is an internal fix? Do you think that a Kolick or a Dadier or some sort of precious balance creates this unit to become much better depth? Or do you think that there's something that has to be done from an outside perspective, even if you don't know what it is yet exactly?
Um, I think if you have a starting center there and having Josh Hart off the bench, that fixes a lot of problems. You severely lack any kind of wing depth on the bench, and then you're immediately getting one of the best wing bench players in the league, and probably the best six man in the league, at least for my money, right away. Dadier has actually looked pretty good at defense and as a spot up three shooter, and I'm hoping the rest will develop. But that changed a lot, and I'm not concerned about our guard play off the bench either. Then you add potentially Precious, hopefully Huck Purdy, but like that's going to be the question mark for the entire season: is where do you get that backup 5 minutes? Like, where is that coming from? Is it coming from Sims? If that's it, you're cooked. Like you're. I don't think you're making it out of the first round. If I'm being honest with you. You saw some nice flashes out of Huck Purdy the other day when he started playing, and I think it was the first Brooklyn game. Looked good. There's some mental errors and everything like that, but you assume that'll go down as the season goes on. He's much better right off the bat than Sims, in my opinion. But realistically, they're in contention towards for the buyout market or for at the trade deadline or something like that. I'm sure that there's a Jonas Valanciunas to be had. You know what I mean? There's someone
Right.
out there that I think can fix that. You need to spell the time in between, and you hopefully have a deal has to be correct, right? Because if you're losing anything else, there's no extra pieces. They pushed all their cards in, and there's nothing else that you can give up at this point. And it sure as hell can't be like a Miles McBride for a Jonas Valanciunas or something like
Oh, yeah, of course.
that. Yeah.
And that's part of the questions here, too. It's like, at what point can you afford to trade? Like, what of your assets are worth enough to get what you need in return, right? Because I know like Taj Gibson's hanging around in Charlotte right now, and Tibbs is probably watching every tape, every play, what Taj is doing over there at 39 years old. But there has to be something. So, two questions. My first one's going to be not specifically center related, but team related. Then I'll ask you a question about some of the ad ideas here. With the whole Josh Hart moving to become the sixth man idea, obviously pushing McBride to be the seventh man, which I think all in all just adds to your depth in a wonderful way. We both play 2K, and we both play the brand of 2K where you do franchise mode and you set the minutes and you sim most of the season, you play some key games and whatever. I think there's a lot of people out there who like that style because you're not going to play 82, right? But we do the coaching where you set up the minute breakdown, right? And sometimes you got a guy, six man, who's getting as much minutes as your worst starter or more minutes. So how do you think Josh Hart's minute breakdown should look if he moves to the bench? Because right now in the starting rotation, Josh Hart is playing 37 minutes a game. Is that something you think should be going down substantially if he moves to the bench? Or do you still see him out there for as many minutes as a Brunson, Cat, and etc.?
It's only 37. It feels like he's like legit has been averaging about 40 this season. That's surprising him.
37 is really high.
Yeah, but no joke. Like it genuinely feels like he has like plenty more. I would love to get him down. I don't know if you remember Tanyan Sturts on the Yankees. It just felt like Joe Torre would put him out there for every situation, and then at the end of the season, his arm fell off. And you kind of keep waiting for that to happen with Josh Hart under Tibbs. It's going to happen eventually. It will happen, and the more that you can protect him and bubble wrap him a little bit, the better. I think the same goes for anyone on this team because the second somebody gets hurt, Josh Hart is filling in for them anyway. The second OG gets hurt, if I knock on wood, McHale, he's never missed a game, but McHale could get hurt. He's going to go jump into there. He'll probably play the four too if they need to. So I'm not really worried about it, but I think I would like to get him down to about 34 ish points a game. Especially because he could be streaky too. He's actually on a tear right now. He's killing it. But he can hit a point where he's not hitting any shots whatsoever, and he's kind of being pulling everything on offense towards him.
Do you know who leads the league in 2-point field goal percentage?
I'm assuming it's Josh Hart.
It's Josh Hart. Isn't that nuts? He's shooting 75% from 2-point range. That's out of
I,
control.
I forget what the stat is the other day, but he's like his 3-point percentage with 5 seconds left on the shot clock or under.
Oh, I'm sure it's probably so much better
It was
than
yeah,
when
it was like
it's.
95%.
No, it's so funny. He's like the type of shooter that he can't think about it too much. He has to kind of just go for it. And that's why in the playoffs, when it's like shit's hitting the fan, you got to go. His 3-pointer looked way better. Also, his elbow clicks back into place, apparently, whatever that means. But Jalen Brunson believes that Josh Hart actually started practicing shooting leading up to the playoffs. That's what Brunson believes, whatever. We'll let them hash it out on the Roommates podcast. But the Hart thing is crazy because he's good for one or two like asinine attempts a game too, like where he's end of the shot clock, like posting up for some reason and like a crazy wrong-footed fadeaway. Like he does it once a game, it never goes in, and you're like, that's crazy that he's still leading the league in 2-point field goal percentage when there's guys like Giants who are 7-2 who seem like they only dunk, and Josh Hart still has a better field goal percentage than them. It's out of control.
Well, I don't know if he also does this thing. I don't know if you noticed. This probably preserves his field goal percentage a little bit. He'll just run straight at the hoop and then not know what to do with it and just toss it backwards. And there's usually someone there because they know it. But he does it every time. It's either a straight shot to the hoop or he panics and he just says, I don't want it, and throws it somewhere else. So they've
So
got
good.
used to it over time.
And I saw Dante DiVincenzo on a podcast recently talking about like playing all those minutes for Tibbs, and he was saying that honestly, as a player, he loved it because like as a competitor, you don't want to ever leave the game. So going into a game knowing he's about to play 40, like he loved it. And he's like, Josh is so funny because Josh went on a streak where he played every minute for like 3 games in a row, and then like game 4, Tibbs would give him like a minute break, and Josh would be coming out like, "Come on, man, why are you taking me out?" And like hearing that's out of control, amazing as a guy that you get to root for. It's like he played 48 minutes, 3 games in a row, and then he played 46 in game 4, and he was pissed that he got taken out for 2 minutes.
No joke. Now in retrospect to all of the past like 5 years or so, was that the most impactful move that was made in this organization, was trading for Josh Hart? Just like with all the cascading events that happened after that, you don't get Mikal Bridges unless you get Josh Hart, right? Like that's probably a realistic thing. You probably don't get Dante DiVincenzo. You don't. I think that's probably like the linchpin moment in what changed it from. And I know Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle were there, but like that like tonally shifted the dynamic to a different sort of team, in my opinion.
Right, like if they don't trade for Josh Hart, do they go on the run they did in that second half, enter the second round, and then get Dante, and then get OG? Like, do all those things happen? I think you and I both firmly appreciate the Randall of it all, of like him being the first domino. Like that first domino fell with Randall, and then the Brunson one fell, and then like the Josh Hart one fell, and that one is what really picked up the momentum. So if you're going to be technical, I'd say we go back to Randall to give him a tip of the cap. But I 100% see what you're saying.
If only we could have seen what Cam Reddish could have been.
Only if. Oh my God. All right, last question for you here, Alec, and then we'll say goodbye. But we'll actually have one more non-basketball question for you at the very end here. But don't have to give me a very specific player relevant to this year or like who's available or whatever. Just use your basketball brain. Use your 2K brain. Think about this as a whole. What is the type of player? Like, who is the type of target that you would think is a type of piece you want to add to this team?
Kessler.
Walker Kessler. Well, that's an actual target that I think is not feasible, but
I know we need a backup center. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. That's the only thing that I think is going to change things. I don't want a starting center. I think if you get a starting center, I think you're expecting too much out of what you're looking for. I think you need a backup center that is not an Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitch level. You're not going to replicate what you did last season. You need someone who's going to be a serviceable 10 to 15 minutes a game, and someone who can step in and spell a starter that goes down, which is probably going to happen. And I think they're out there, and I think they're pretty easy to get if you wait for the timing to be correct. But that'll require some struggles for the next couple of months. But hopefully some of those can get sorted out.
Like, are you thinking like a like not like an Andre Drummond, or is like that?
I don't see Drummond being bad. I don't see that being a negative situation at all. The only problem with Drummond is the mentality and the attitude, right? That's what worries you.
I'm kind of anti Drummond, but yes, the type of Drummond.
theoretically with Andre Drummond, that's actually exactly what the team needs, right? Just someone who's going to play some decent defense. You don't have to worry about the limitations like their free throw, although he's gotten better at that. Like, all that stuff that limits him. If he's a backup center, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. He's going to get 10 to 15 and he can start if he needs to. And you're getting enough offensive production out of Cat and the rest of the crew that you can spell that entirely, like they would be able to do it with Mitch.
Right.
If you can find another Mitch out there, if you can get Robert Williams, if you can get someone like that, I'm totally fine with that. And I think that like up levels the team so much, as long as you're not giving up much because you don't have anything left to give, right? Like maybe you could trade Campaign and a second round pick. That's not a big deal to me, but
Campaign's a guy who we haven't mentioned yet today, and I feel like he's been a little bit forgotten. He's kind of doing Campaign stuff for this team though.
I'm fine with him. I have no gripes with Campaign.
Right. Yeah, we haven't mentioned him once today, and I feel like I keep forgetting about him. Like, it's like, oh, we have Miles McBride, and maybe Kolek could get going. It's like forgetting that Campaign is playing every game and, like, kind of sparking great offensive production when he's out there because he's one of these guys that when someone gets a rebound and they give the ball to Campaign, it's a fast break attempt. He may end up pulling it back, but he is pushing the ball. He is pushing it forward through passing, running the floor quickly, taking those shots that sometimes are absolutely money and sometimes look terrible. But I think he's been an underrated part of this offensive production. How many times recently have we seen Brunson's out and it's Campaign, Mikal Bridges, OG, Cat, and whoever else, McBride or Hart, and it's like the offense is going on an absolute run. And I think that's because Campaign, very different from Brunson, doesn't look to slow it down and hold the ball back and get the best shot like after time. He is looking to push, and let's get a quick, good look.
Well, you know who he reminds me of? A little bit of J.R. Smith back in the day when he was coming off the bench. Just like he's just taking his shots. He's going to do it. He wants to get his up. It doesn't feel like it's at the cost of anyone else, even though it probably is. I don't think anyone sees it that way. And you need a spark plug. You need someone who's going to get hot off the bench sometimes. We really haven't had that in a while. You have the guys that are pretty dependable, and you have the guys that aren't historically. But just someone who can go out there, make 4 threes in a row, and then the next game is 0 for 5, and then gets 7 minutes. It gets pulled after 7 minutes. So I like having a dynamic like that. I'm fine with him. He's exactly what I expected him to be, which is not a bad thing. And I think it's really good because I don't love Kolek so far. I'm not saying he can't be good in the future, but I just don't really see a lot out of him. And Deuce has been hurt, but I like Deuce at the 2 anyway better. I think he's they're doing committee point guard things anyway. So I think it's been good so far.
Yeah, Deuce is the pure combo guard of combo guards, but Campaign's been nice. And I think a telltale sign on a player like Campaign is when you face him as the team going against your team and like you're petrified of Campaign. Like last year in that Philly series, when Campaign was getting shots up, you're like, oh my God, can he stop shooting? I really don't want to see him ripping anymore because it seems like he can't miss. And then he'll miss 5 in a row, but he really puts the pressure on a defense. On the center front, just some like kind of random names here that some are a little too high end that I don't think are realistic. Some are maybe a little lower, but like a Goja Batatse, Jackson Hayes, Isaiah Stewart. Like these are guys who right now are already playing like between 16 and 20 minutes. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of it. Like Mason Plumlee, he's obviously a vet who does a few things pretty well. Like those are the types of guys that maybe, are going to be available. Alex Len in Sacramento, like he's getting less burn this year than he has in years past. Like maybe those are the types of guys that you're going to have to see, and they're not going to really raise your ceiling much, but they're going to just boost your floor up a little bit.
Which is all you need.
You just have to be better than Sims, basically, right? Like that's what it comes down to.
I mean, I would love a Batatse. I know he's not obviously on the market. They're not going to ship him.
And even if he is on the market, he'll just take a little too much for what the Knicks are looking to probably give up right now.
I think realistically, your best bet. I just fell in love with the idea the other day was Valanciunas, but I don't know how they can make the money work because I think he's making enough. Like I know, but he moves well enough for his age.
No, but he's like, to me, Valanciunas is a rebounder and offensive player. Like he's not a great defender. Like he gets cooked. He can't help out on switches. Like he's too slow.
So I'm not saying you need to have I think that could work because it's with Sims. The problem isn't just one thing; it's all the things. He can't rebound either, right? And if
for the guy who jumps through the gym, he can't really rebound.
He has the worst hands I have ever seen on a center in my entire life. ball's right in his hands, it's in the stands. He just tips it 40 rows back afterwards. I don't even understand how it happens. But like, you just need a center who can do one or two good things off the bench for you, I think. And I think that opens up a lot of options. I don't think you need to rely on them for really anything besides, hey, they're a rim protector, or they're a rebounder, or hey, yeah, they'll get you 8 points off the bench or something like that. Whatever it is, just someone that comes in and does something well, or does everything just okay. Though that's really all I'm asking for. Sims is
Right.
just genuinely that bad. He's genuinely that bad.
Yeah. So out of everybody who actually plays real minutes for this team right now, he is by far the worst on plus minus. Like, I'm not going to count Matt Ryan, who has played like, 4 games, not that many minutes, whatever, Pacom Dadier, even Huck Purdy. Huck Purdy hasn't played enough for his number to even matter right now. Anyone who's played in most of the games this season, like, he's by far been the worst. So for reference, if you look at box plus minus, Karl-Anthony Towns has been by far the best at a plus 7.2, which is like out of control good. Then you have Josh Hart, Cam Payne, and then Jalen Brunson, OG, Miles McBride, Mikal Bridges. Jericho Sims is a minus 3.4. Like, again, based upon even like the worst starter on the team, which has technically been Mikal Bridges, and that's based on probably a number of factors, him playing the most minutes in the league right now, like, he's a minus 1.1. Jericho Sims is a minus 3.4 in way less minutes. So he is having a larger than life negative impact when he's out there. And that's the crux of it. If you get somebody who's giving you that, what is he playing per game? He's playing
Probably like 11 minutes.
He's playing 14 minutes a game. If you get 14 minutes a game at net zero, like, that's a massive win. That's a huge difference in a backup center.
I saw something the other day. Like, we have the best starting 5 offensive rating in the league, and we have the worst bench offensive rating in the league as well too. So yeah, anything there just elevates the floor exponentially.
Right. Like, he's just been a negative on offense. He's been a negative on defense. And that's just not good. Not good. Not good. All right. Now, this is my last question. I said that was the last one. This is the last one. They're currently 8-6. They're in 4th place. They're, half game behind the Magic in 3rd, who's still without Paolo Banchero. They have the 3rd best point differential in the Eastern Conference, behind obviously the Cavs and Celtics. Where do you want to see them, Alec? They're 8-6 through 14 games. Where do you want to see them through 30 games? What's like a general record? I'm not expecting your math to math perfectly here, but what do you think?
I'd like to see them through 30 games around 20-10.
Okay, so you're looking for 12-4 in their next bunch of games,
which I think is pretty doable based off their schedule. I mean, just going off this, Phoenix is a toss-up. Utah's is a schedule. Obviously there'll be some trap games and things will go awry, but Phoenix, Utah, Denver, Dallas, Charlotte on this road trip, that's a pretty reasonable one to get through. This next homestand is very, very manageable with Charlotte, New Orleans, Orlando, and No Palo, and then Charlotte and Detroit. I mean, you should be coming out of that next 10 games or so looking pretty good. And if you're not, you got problems. Then you're going to Detroit, Toronto, and then Minnesota is the first decent team that you're playing in a while. So
yeah,
I think you can expect them. You should expect them to come out of with a similar record to what I was saying. If they're not, you got problems.
So if they're 10 games over at around the 30 game mark, we're feeling a lot better. I think,
because again, it's all about the expectations of what this team is. This is not the team. If this was last year, I would say, let's just wait till we get to the All-Star break and see where we're at, and hopefully we go.
They were a 500 team at the All-Star break last year,
right? But that's not what this team is anymore, and the expectations have to be different.
100% agree. And like I said this on Twitter as well. It's like, it's super important to dominate teams you're supposed to dominate. Yeah. Like, it's just something that great teams do. If you're the Celtics and you're the Cavs, you're facing, the freaking Raptors, who are like one of the worst teams in the league this year. You got to win by 15-20. There's just nothing more to it. Like, you can't play the way they played the Wizards on Monday night. Like, that's the expectation. You have to dominate teams you're supposed to dominate. And if the Knicks start doing that, and then, you lose a tough game, like a hard fought game to the Nuggets in Denver, you can't like cry about it, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? Like you want to win that game. However, if you go out and then lose to the Jazz, then yeah, you're pissed. But if you go dominate the Jazz, lose to the Nuggets, and like win a close one against Dallas, that's what this team's supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, if they
So
just fix up their their fourth quarter defense, and this whole season looks a lot different. So,
yeah.
um, if they
So
can focus on
so
that,
give
and
me
just get the
so give me this. Give me this. Your worry meter on 1 to 10, like a week ago. Your worry meter on 1 to 10, like right now.
went from a 7 to a 5.
Okay. Okay. I think
I'm
I
still
went from
pretty
like
worried. Like I'm like medium.
I think I went from like a 3.5 to like a 2.5 because I and you know that I'm not just like saying this because they're playing like a little
I know.
better for 3 games. I've been saying this. Like I'm not worried yet. If you're super worried right now, I think you're overreacting. I've been telling you that for 2 weeks.
But let me ask you a question. Are you concerned about the ceiling of this team? That's my question. Like, are you worried? Are you not worried because, like, yeah, they're a good team. We all know that they're a good team, but I'm worried that they are not contenders in the way that I thought they were. And I'm curious if we're judging it on the same metric.
I'm worried that built to beat Boston was a pie in the sky idea in the first place. That's what I'm worried about. I don't know if anyone's built to beat Boston right now. And that's my worry. I am not worried that their ceiling, or I shouldn't say ceiling, but their expectation is to be a top 2 or top 3 team in the East. I think they are very much on track to be the second or third best odds to win the Eastern Conference.
And I know it was the first game, and I know they're coming. A team that had never really played against each other versus a team that just literally won a championship together. But it doesn't concern you that the Knicks are getting beat pretty handily and pretty embarrassedly, if that's a word, against some of these good teams. Like that's what worries me. If they lost to the Celtics in Game 1 by hey, we lost by 10 points. It was in the Garden. You're expecting it. They literally tied the record for most threes in a game. And then that wasn't
Right.
just an outlier because then that's been happening for the rest of the season as everyone is just destroying us from 3-pointers. And that kind of has set the foundation for the season. So like, that's what worries me is that, yeah, we can beat shitty teams. Sometimes we could lose to shitty teams, but like we are not competitive against good teams thus far. That's what scares me.
They haven't played that many good teams yet. I think that's part of it. So, like again, they've lost to Atlanta and Chicago, and like that sucks. Like you kind of can't, you kind of can't go around that one. But they've only played Boston and Cleveland as far as like true contender teams. They haven't played OKC. They haven't played Denver. They haven't played Dallas. They haven't played Golden State. Like these are the teams that I think you stack up against. And frankly, if this 30-10 idea that you threw out before comes to fruition, that's when I'm going to start actually measuring stick, taking that out and putting it up against Minnesota and Dallas and Denver and Golden State, OKC, etc. Because right now, like if the Knicks go on this run and they're at 30-10 after 30, I'm sorry, 20-10 after 30 games, and they, beat Phoenix really well and they beat Denver in Denver and like they hang with Oklahoma City in the new year, like, yeah, I'm fine. Here we are. This is where we were supposed to be. This is where we're at. So I don't think that the ceiling is off yet. I just think built to beat Boston was a little bit of a false hope to start off the season.
Maybe I will say out of the next 16 games, they're playing really crappy teams for the
Yes.
vast majority of it. So I don't think that 20-10 is an unrealistic expectation. I think
I don't think so either.
Yeah, and I think that then what'll happen is that I'm overconfident if they achieve that because then they haven't played anybody good in a while, and then it's going to be a totally diametric opposition to it.
Yeah, and then again, like Philly's been trashed this year, but if Philly starts playing a lot better, then that game becomes important again, right? Like Milwaukee's been bad this year. If they start playing better, then that game becomes interesting again. Like these things are all fluid, right? So you can't even really judge the Knicks completely yet because guess what? Like they lost to Chicago. Chicago's been kind of decent this year, like relative to the Eastern Conference. They've been decent. And if all of a sudden the Bulls are 10 games above 500, I'm just using them as an example. It's like, oh, so that loss maybe wasn't as bad as we thought, right? So you're always going to move the goalpost a little bit throughout a long season, especially when it's this early.
Yeah, I'm really happy I'm not a Sixers fan because that sucks and they are screwed for the rest of the season.
It's hysterical, isn't it? Yo, the fact that Tyrese Maxey had to step up and call out Joel Embiid to like show up on time to stuff. Wow. Wow.
That is a cooked organization.
At least they have the Eagles though, because listen, the Eagles are playing good ball right now.
What an unnecessary comment.
I'm just saying. I feel bad for Philly fans right now. Just kidding. I don't feel bad at all. They suck. I hate them. All right. Last question, Alec. Thank you for the Knicks talk. Let's get a Juan Soto take. Give me a take here, please. What do you think, Juan Soto? I know also why you think about this for a second. I'll let you think on this. You've been hurt. You're a sports fan who's been hurt recently. You dive into the Yankee season. There's ups and downs. There's negativity. There's no fun. Then all of a sudden there's fun. Oh my God, it's a World Series. Look, they're going to do it. They're going to win the World Series. It's amazing. And then you get heartbroken again. The Giants suck. Like you've been a hurt sports fan. And I think that's fading into your Knicks fandom a little bit right now,
Probably.
based upon the little bit of disappointment so far. So try to remove that. Juan Soto, big free agent. He's meeting with teams. What's going to happen with Juan Soto, according to Alec Argento?
I mean, you said it all 5 seconds ago, which is going to influence my answer. It feels like he's destined to go to the Dodgers, which is just going to be super not fun for baseball, realistically.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't know. Passan tweeted that the Mets are off the table, so it sounds like then at that point.
Wait, that was real?
Wasn't it?
No, I thought that was a joke. That was on his Blue Sky account. I think that's fake.
Oh, did I get goofed?
Drew sent that in. That Jeff Passan, by the way. It's not Passan, is it?
Whatever, dude.
Yeah, it's not a real tweet. I think somebody made a Blue
Sky is.
I think somebody made a Blue Sky account and named themselves Jeff Passan and just tweeted that out. I think that was fake.
Oh, that sucks. I was excited.
No, not for me. It was real. It's good.
Then I could see him go to the Mets. I keep seeing it's hard with this time because like it's all gut feeling because every report is contradictory to the other one. If the Mets are still on the table, I could see him going to the Mets. I think they're going to pay the most. I think he gets to be the guy there. Not that he cares. I think that he'll just be able to, sit back and collect his paycheck for the next 25 years with all the differential deferred payment that he's going to get. I don't think he's going to the Yankees. That's my big take, I guess, to answer your question. And
are you okay with that?
No. But what am I going to do?
Well, I mean, listen, dude, there's a lot of Yankee fans out there who are talking themselves into it. Oh, we don't need him. Oh, he's actually really bad on defense. Oh, is he actually worth a lot of money?
On defense. He is very bad on defense.
But you want him. I'm not talking about you. Yankees fans, they want him. I mean, they're talking themselves out of it.
I will say, this is the first time in my life I understood why people hate the Yankees for buying championships and everything. You look at if Soto goes to the Dodgers, that really does suck for the game of baseball. Not as a Yankee fan, but just as a fan of the sport. There was nobody who could have beat them this year, and now they get exponentially better with arguably, a top 3 player in the league. That's super not fun. So for the sake of baseball, I hope he goes somewhere else. I hope he goes. I'd rather him go to the Mets, and that's saying something.
That's saying a lot for you
to say that. Yeah, I would rather him go to the Mets or the Yankees or somewhere else. Than go to the Dodgers because it's super not fun because they're going to get Roki Sasaki as well, the Japanese phenom again, the Dodgers. So they're just going to keep buying whoever the hell they want because they can.
Yeah, it sucks. Frick the Dodgers, man, and it's just stupid. It's like Yankee fans who are being dramatic right now are like, well, we don't need Soto. Like even though he just had this incredible year, who cares? He sucks at right field. Let's get Bregman, Santander, Goldschmidt, and Corbin Burns. We'll be fine. It's like, why do you think the Yankees are going to get all 4 of those pieces? Like, what have they proven to you that they're going to get all 4 of those pieces?
Yeah, I just you got to hope that they overcorrect, right? I think
I don't hope. Past, you hope.
in the past they've done that. You always look at 2009 as like the shining example of, hey, we got embarrassed the year before, so we're going to do everything in our power to and they got the 3 best free agents on the market. They haven't done anything like that since. Usually they take one big swing every other year, and that's kind of it. But right. You got to get a third baseman who can play. You got to get a right fielder who can play, and you need some real help around the rest of the roster. So while the Yankees lost in the World Series, they still made it to the World Series. It doesn't really matter that this team is a deeply, deeply flawed team, and with the fact that you're bringing back Aaron Boone for some god awful reason, you need to overcompensate with some of the foundational baseball errors that you get accompanied with his managerial style.
All right, so you think he's going to the Mets? That's great. Love it.
To answer
that's what I got out of that. That's what I got out of that. I don't know, man. I think that the reporting is so funny, dude. People like latch on to like the dumbest reports. It's like, have you ever used the internet before? Like this person, just click on his profile. They're not a serious reporter. Like, what do you
Yeah,
need?
I got God. I deactivated all like my social media. I'm taking a little mental health cleanse. So I didn't know
Nice.
that Blue Sky was a fake thing. I didn't even know what that was.
Well, Blue Sky is a real thing. It's just like this new. It's the next new Twitter. Frankly,
Oh, got it.
it's the
Oh,
next
that's the
new
Jack
X.
Dorsey thing. That's the thing
Yeah,
Jack
yeah, yeah.
Dorsey left to go make. Got it. Yeah.
But
Well, I
like,
got caught, so I didn't know that that was a real thing.
it's like when people are like, "Oh, I'm moving to Threads." It's like, yeah, okay. No one else is. It's all just weird spam on there too. So I don't know what you're trying to avoid here. All another thing, and I know we've been trying to end this podcast for like 10 minutes
You're good.
now, but all these people who are like, "Oh, we got to get off Twitter." It's like all the people who make Twitter go are the people who have taken years and years and years to build really great followings. They're not leaving and starting from scratch unless the thing freaking stops, right? Like if you're unless you're Jeff Passan, right, where people are going to seek out who the hell you are. If you've built out a following, you're not leaving. Twitter's not going anywhere.
I see what you're saying in theory, but same people said that when like ESPN was like people were going to the Athletic or something like that. People will follow the people that they like, and if they go, they will do those things.
But that would take all the people with the followings to leave, which is
It
not
takes
happening.
enough people. It doesn't take all of them. It takes enough people to build
Takes a
up a
lot.
following.
That ain't happening.
I don't care. I don't really have a dog in the race. One
Are
way or the
people going
other.
to start blue skying? Like, yeah, it's just weird. It's not. I
People
just don't think it's
people
happening.
went
Not
from
soon yet.
Facebook to
Not soon.
Twitter. People went from Facebook to Twitter, and then they got to go somewhere else. It's a natural progression point.
I guess we shall see. All right,
I
that's
don't
all we got.
really
Me neither. Subway Sports Talk. Pete Kennedy, Alec Argento. The Knicks,
Mwah.
the panic has decreased in Knicks world, and that's a good thing. I don't know if it's decreased for everybody or fully, but it's less, I think, now than it was a week ago. So that's a win. That's a positive direction to move. That's all we got on Subway Sports Talk. Thank you, Alec, Pete Kennedy, right here on Subway Sports Talk, Apple Podcasts, app, Spotify, YouTube, the whole nine. Social media at Subway Sports Talk. Follow us there. And as well, maybe try to get some little articles going soon. Looking to create the little Substack action to get some
Ooh.
thoughts out. You know, just thinking a lot aloud, like trying to get these quick thoughts like, oh, I just thought about this game. I watched something. Let me type something up and send it to your email real quick. How you doing? How you been? So we'll see if Substack gets off the ground a little bit here soon for Subway Sports Talk. So keep an eye out for that. That's all we got. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.